One of the worst Star Trek movies, The Final Frontier, could have been a lot better. I mean, all it needed was its first choice casting, a real effects team, and maybe for the production trucks to stop blowing up.
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off!
From alternate castings and studio strikes to actual mythical animals, here are 5 facts behind the making of The Final Frontier and how it just went completely off the rails. Long regarded as one of the worst Star Trek films, well, until Nemesis and Into Darkness, and we won't talk about Section 31. Unlike those movies, though, The Final Frontier does have moments fans genuinely love, and honestly, the movie could have been a lot better if it hadn't been for a few things. In 1988, the Writers Guild of America went on strike over residuals and creative rights. We've all seen, even recently, how badly a writer strike can wreck a TV show or movie. Heroes, we miss you. The strike lasted 153 days and it did affect Star Trek. And not just this Star Trek. Remember the Next Generation episode, Shades of Grey? Well, you can thank the strike for that one. However, the Final Frontier script was already complete and ready to move into production, so if the writer's strike didn't derail The Final Frontier, what did? The Teamsters strike. In 1988, truckers went on strike right at the moment that The Final Frontier was entering major location work, including the scenes at Yosemite National Park. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what Teamsters do, they handle camera trucks, lighting trucks, basically the entire fleet that makes films actually happen. Due to Shatner's contract and the studio's schedule, Paramount needed to keep production moving, so they hired non-union replacement drivers, scabs who weren't experienced in handling the equipment. This obviously slowed everything down and put pressure on an already tight budget. Things were so bad that a truck even exploded on the Paramount parking lot. So ultimately, it was the Teamsters strike that properly screwed Star Trek V's production. The writer's strike only really affected the marketing, but it wasn't just these strikes that affected The Final Frontier. Sybok, the controversial surprise, I'm your half-brother sci-fi telenovela character, ended up being played by a relatively unknown actor, Lawrence Luckinbill. But he wasn't the studio's pick. He wasn't even the second pick. That honor went to Max von Sydow before the studio dropped the idea because he was just too expensive. But the biggest clue for who they really wanted for the role is actually sitting right there in the finished film. The planet where the Enterprise crew meets the being claiming to be God is called Shakari. So, say it out loud.
Shakari.
Go on.
Shakari.
It's named after the actor Shatner wanted for Sybok.
Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
AKA Sean Connery. Shatner wanted James Bond himself to play Spock's rebellious Vulcan brother. Unfortunately though, while Star Trek was off trying to find God, Sean Connery was busy trying to find the Cup of Christ. Production on The Final Frontier clashed with Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and that killed the dream. There's no doubt that Connery would have brought something completely different to the role. Maybe more gravitas, maybe more punching, but honestly, who doesn't want to see a Scottish Vulcan? Live long and prosper, ya wee fanny. In the end, the role went to Lawrence Luckinbill, and that actually turns out to be one of the most unexpectedly heartwarming things about this film. So after missing out on Sean Connery and skipping over Max von Sydow, the part of Sybok finally went to Lawrence Luckinbill. Luckinbill was a solid working actor, mostly theatre, some TV, even cocktail, but it was his stage work that got him noticed. Now, he'd been frequently performing a one-man show called Linden, which was eventually filmed and aired on PBS in 1987. Shatner watched it, pointed at the screen, and basically went, "That's the guy." Harve Bennett and Shatner looked him up, called him in, and offered him the role on the spot. And it turns out they didn't fully do their research on Luckinbill though, because Lawrence Luckinbill's wife is Lucie Arnaz, the daughter of Lucille Ball. Yes, that Lucille Ball, the I Love Lucy Lucille Ball, the co-owner of Desilu Studios, the birthplace and original home of Star Trek. And if you know your Star Trek history, you know that she fought for Star Trek after the first pilot was rejected by the studios. Imagine that, saving Star Trek only for your son-in-law to appear in the final frontier. I mean, that must have made family dinners really awkward. Hey, mother-in-law, you know how you saved Star Trek? Well, I almost killed it. When you want to get the best special effects in your film, then there's only one company worth calling: ILM. Industrial Light and Magic, or ILM, was founded in 1975 during production of Star Wars, and the work that they did on the Star Wars and later Indiana Jones made them the gold standard. Now, they had previously handled The Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, and The Voyage Home. Quick aside, by the way, The Wrath of Khan contained ILM's first in-house, completely computer-generated sequence. So naturally, they wanted ILM to work on Star Trek V. However, that year, the effects house best technicians were occupied with a couple of small-time movies, you know, like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, Back to the Future Part 2, you know, real indie projects. So, with a stretched budget and short time frame, in steps Associates and Ferrin to handle the effects. Unfortunately, between Shatner's big creative demands and a tight budget, we ended up with reused shots from previous movies and, well, this effect for God. Using Associates and Ferrin was the cinematic equivalent of turning around to your kid and saying, "Hey, we don't need ILM, we have ILM at home." Which, in this case, were men in rubber rock monster suits. Yeah, let's talk about that. Strikes, unsuccessful casting, and the wrong special effects studio all contributed to the problems of Star Trek V. However, in a 1993 interview, producer Harve Bennett blames all the movie's shortcomings on one thing: William Shatner. Now, ultimately, Shatner had full creative control over the movie, and that included final story approval, and that really shaped everything that went wrong. His idea of the crew go searching for God was already derided by the casting crew, but it was in his insistence on trying to make an animal appear otherworldly that saw him being overridden by the great bird of the galaxy, Gene Roddenberry. At the beginning of the film, we see Sybok appear on a horse. Now, Shatner wanted these horses to be gold unicorns, but Gene Roddenberry pushed back, saying that these would be too much like fantasy. So in the end, the horses on Nimbus 3 were dyed blue and given a modified unicorn look. For the end fight between Kirk and God, Shatner made his biggest demand. He wanted to be chased by 10 rock men. Now, in the end, one rock suit was made, costing $350,000, making it too expensive for the other 9 suits to be made. They filmed with it, realized it looked awful, and the whole sequence was scrapped and replaced by whatever this is. So, turns out, in Hollywood, paper really does beat rock. Well, the lack of paper, that is. So there you have it, but now it's your turn. Tell me in the comments a fact about the Final Frontier that I missed, and am I actually being unfair, and is the Final Frontier actually good? Of course, if you enjoyed this video, the best way to support the channel is to like it and hit that subscribe button. I'm working towards 1,000 subscribers and I'd love to have you on board. Thanks for watching.